Live from Western Kentucky University, capital of the Hilltopper Nation. Whether it's in the locker room or on the field, behind the clipboard or on the court, home or away, we've got you covered. Get ready to enter the Red Zone, your destination for all things sports, right here on Revolution 91.7.
Welcome back into another edition of the Red Zone here on Revolution 91.7. Josh Holland here with Billy Rutledge and rookie coming in off the bench. Any other sports reference you want to use?
Now batting.
Off of the injury report, I guess, is best served. Mr. Kyle Neumann, the Newman. Of all the ones I didn't use,
Newman.
The new man Newman is the one that was last.
Newman.
It's great to be on the show, though.
You know, Kyle, sorry. Kyle, it really is good to have you here, and I guess our audience doesn't know. Kyle, you had a freak accident a few weeks ago.
Tell us about
and
the
part of your recovery process now is getting here and getting winded
in one piece
on Red Zone.
That's right. I did happen to have my right lung collapse spontaneously, but the good news is I am doing better. So it should be a great show, and I will be talking.
You need a lot of hot air to rebuttal against Josh and I right now, so hopefully you're going to be able to...
That's about the worst connotation of the word spontaneously. Like, usually spontaneous, like, hey, be more spontaneous. You know, let's go out on dates more. Be more spontaneous. Let's call different pass plays. Be more, it's like, my lung collapsed spontaneous.
I mean, did it feel bad? Like, were you just in, like...
No, it probably felt great,
It didn't
Billy.
feel great, but... Yeah, it happens, and here I am, ready to talk sports.
I don't know. I'd be pissed. Like, I would have been, like, mad.
Billy would be so mad at his lung.
Like, I'd be mad at my lungs. And
there was a comedian that he's like, why do we call it a lazy eye? Like,
it's doing more than the other eye.
If someone has a heart defect, you don't go, man, that heart just doesn't care. But no, someone's eye doesn't work, and you're like, that is the laziest eye that I have ever seen.
It's a high energy eye.
What we do know, though, is that Kyle's lung has hit the gym, hit the weights, gotten back in shape for this week's edition of the Red Zone. And fellas, we are knee-deep, maybe more like hip-deep in March Madness as we're entering the Final Four. We're going to get to that one later. If you have any questions, comments on Louisville, UK, I know there's a lot of fans around this region that like a different red from Louisville or whatever that blue color is in Lexington. If you have any questions, comments, anything, tweet us at WKU Redzone. We're going to start the first part of the show with WKU sports, baseball, football. Then we're going to get into national stuff and regional stuff with March Madness. Fellas, on the Hill this past weekend, one sports that was on the Hill this past weekend was baseball. It's getting that time of year, and the baseball team had been on a run. 6 out of 7 they had won, and then they faced a good UAB team. And UAB, the record might not show just
underrated.
How good they were. Exactly. But they won second in the conference last year. Their starting ace had been injured for a little while. He came back on Sunday and threw a gem. They lose 3 to UAB. So after winning 6 of 7, going a 3-game losing streak, and now they're looking towards Louisiana Tech, trying to regain that momentum.
And that's just typical Hilltopper baseball. Right there is they win a few games, they go even a sweep, but they'll lose the next 3, and eventually they'll just all level out around 500. That's what WKU is at right now, 13-13. But again, this UAB team is underrated. Conference USA is a great baseball conference. Western comes from a good baseball conference in the Sun Belt to an even better one, the teams like Rice and UAB. And so that's expected to happen with just kind of the adjustment into the conference.
The adjustment process.
Adjustment process.
Right.
But it wasn't like it was blowouts, though. That's a good thing for Western. They led in, I believe, in almost every one of these games. And the final one that was the most blown out of proportion, 7-1, I mean, Western held a 1-0 lead. So if you're looking at it in the Tots perspective, you know, it was a close series, even though you got swept. I'm sure Myers isn't happy, especially not having a game this week. But, you know, it's not the worst performance or the worst sweep in this scenario.
No, and, you know, UAB is 4th in Conference USA, 17-10 overall, and in the last 10 games they're 7-3, so they are playing hot. What I saw in this series was WKU not being able to convert hits into runs, and they scored 1 run in 2 of the 3 losses. And they committed 2 errors in 2 of the 3 losses.
Right.
So fundamentals.
And a lot it was the middle of the lineup, middle beginning. It was Church, Wofford, and Miller. Usually the large bats were actually pretty inconsistent. It was a below 200, I believe, that they were batting for the series, so they really didn't have a good series. And when those bats, especially those three, go for Western, I mean, you can't rely on Caleb Duckworth and newcomers. I know Leif Clarkson's having a fantastic season so far, but you can't rely on those guys to have the production. You need Church, Wofford, and Miller to drive in 2 or 3.
And Wofford and Miller have been doing that. Church has dipped below 250, and he was a guy that had a tear at the end of last season, and maybe there's another one like that coming this year. But Church was a guy, and is a guy still, that they expect to produce power, but a little bit more consistency.
He kills the ball. I'm talking bombs, home runs.
Yeah, when he hits it. I mean,
right.
But lately he's not been that stud in the middle of the lineup that really the top of their lineup with Anderson Miller and Cody Wofford had been far more dangerous than the 3 and 4 spot. You know, generally in a major league lineup and a college lineup, that 3 and 4 spot, you want to get people on base, and then you want to hit home runs. And Diedrich and Church were both struggling, and Diedrich got moved down to the bottom of the lineup there towards the end of the series this past weekend, and it really was about not converting hits. I mean, they out-hit UAB on Saturday by a wide margin. They lose by 1 in the final inning after a Hunter Wood strikeout with the bases loaded. So there are people on base. That's not the issue. It just seems to be figuring out how to get them to cross the one base that matters.
Right. And minus the second game in the series, the Hilltoppers pitching really did good for the first half of the games, and the late pitching collapses hurt the Tops. In 2 of the 3 losses, WKU didn't give up a run until the 6th inning.
And that's pretty good, and especially in Western standards, because it's usually the bullpen that's been collapsing. In Friday, they only give up 2 runs. You love that, even though if you lose the game. But giving up 2 runs only, I know it was the ace pitcher, I believe it was Thurston that pitched on Friday, right. And he's just been incredible so far this entire season.
Matt Myers talked about Thurston today, and he said he's somehow not cocky, but still goes onto the mound and says, I'm better than you. You know, like, he's a soft-throwing lefty, is what Myers described him as. He's not throwing 95 past you.
It's all deception.
Right,
really.
He goes, I'm going to throw this curve, you're not going to hit it. I'm going to throw my changeup.
And he's a lefty.
You're not going to hit it.
And he's a lefty, which is, you know, in baseball, that's a much bigger impact than kind of being a righty or a lefty in other sports. So when you're a lefty, it just seems like the baseball gods have blessed you in case, especially in Little League. If you were a lefty, you were starting pitching, even if you could only throw it 30, 40 miles per hour.
Did I love Little League. 8 years.
Oh, I was great. I was great back in the day before I didn't grow in high school and before my athletic ability went away. But I mean, I used to be good at baseball, and even though I wasn't a lefty, I still had some playing time. But lefties naturally just get to play more in baseball. And when it comes to the upper levels, and when they have deception like a curveball, it's something that players see a lot less of instead of the natural righty. So, Thurston's able to not throw high pitches or high velocity pitches, but still be able to.
And this is the same guy that almost had a no-hitter in his first ever start at Indiana last year. Indiana featured a closer in Kyle Schwarber that got drafted number 2 overall. They had some hitters on that team, and Thurston comes in and almost has I think he gave up 1 hit with 2 outs in the 9th, which is like the biggest gut punch you could take in a no-hitter. I'd rather give up the first hit of the game than a hit in the 9th with 2 outs.
I don't know, because I would go through the entire game and still have that feeling of, you dominated the entire game. Like, even though the first one gets it out of the way, but I mean, just have that chance of perfection.
Either way, you dominated the entire game. But looking back on it from a grand scope, I would much rather get a hit off the leadoff batter and then just run the team than have this whole build up. Like, I'm going to have this no hitter.
No, that would be fun though. That's the part of the enjoyment. Like, even though you lost it, I mean, it's still like a magical moment that everybody's in the stands is cheering. Even the away fans, or even the fans.
You don't cheer for one hitters?
No, you don't cheer for one hitters. I don't care if the guy got it's 1 hit and he's trying to go for the shutout. Like, that's not nostalgic. But if I'm watching a game, even if I'm the home team losing, you know what I'm saying? Even if I'm Indiana, I'm the fans. I'm still cheering for this guy to get a no-hitter.
That's fair. Well, they'll need him on Friday night, and I guess probably a decent chance he'll be able to hold Louisiana Tech down, especially if he was able to do it against UAB, because Louisiana Tech coming into this weekend 1-7 in conference, below 500 on the season.
Not very good.
Not great. And they've got 1 win against Southern Miss. They beat them 2-1. So this is not a Texter team that is going to dominate WKU. And if you're the Hilltoppers, it's a pretty darn good time to play a 1-7 team, because you want to get back on the upswing before you have to play Rice. Because if you are not playing your best ball, You could be playing your best baseball of the season and get beat 3-0 in a series by Rice. But if you are not playing your best baseball of the season, that 3-0 becomes like 11-1 games.
Right, and it's going to be a pretty drastic. And we talked about this last week, and we talked about the topic of Kentucky in the weekend series that Western would have, and how they would do and how would they pit. And we were both on the opposite fence. I would say Kentucky would probably do better, and Western comes in and gets swept by UAB, a pretty good talented school, probably maybe around the same as Kentucky. But, it's weird. Baseball is the different kind of sport. It's kind of a grind, and you kind of go through these lulls in the season. So when you see a sweep like this, sweeps are always not good, but it's not the worst case scenario in these points. And so it's important, especially with Rice coming up, that Western gets some confidence back. I'm not saying they have to sweep La Tech. You don't come into a series and say, oh, we're going to sweep this team. I mean, just sweeps don't happen that very often, but this is definitely a confidence building series.
Yes, well, this Louisiana Tech team, though they are the worst team in Conference USA, they're 8-3 at home. So this is a team that I do believe WKU, it's a team that they want to play to try and get back on track. But the bottom line is you have to convert those hits into runs, and you have to stay fundamentally sound on defense throughout the whole game.
The Hilltoppers played the Bowling Green Hot Rods later this year.
They play them on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Before the Hot Rods open their season, yeah.
That's going to be exciting.
Awesome.
The conversation of whether a college basketball team could beat a really bad NBA team seems like it's a really bad argument because, most of the time the NBA team's going to win. It's just the talent level. But baseball's a little bit different. I mean, if they throw one of their better pitchers and, the Hot Rods aren't the best single A team. So, that's an intriguing matchup.
I wouldn't bank on them throwing one of the best pitchers.
I wouldn't either.
First of all, it's a midweek game. Second of all, it's an exhibition game. I mean,
they're using wood bats too.
I would bank on something similar to what we saw against Kentucky, where you've got 4 guys pitching 2 or 3 innings apiece.
Well, how Western,
which is still, the crowd there is what I'm excited for. Not so much. The baseball could be non-competitive, but the crowd there, if the community is interested in some sort of pool between the teams or some sort of pool for both at the same time because the community supports them equally, then that's what could make the atmosphere worthwhile. The baseball aspect of it, in single A ball, you have a bunch of prospects trying to get to the next level. It's not always that much about winning. It's about, individual stats. And then if it's a midweek game for an exhibition college team, so I don't know how competitive the actual game is. I think the crowd, the atmosphere, whatever the ballpark has going on around it is what makes that game.
Do you think that there's more fans at this game, Bowling Green Hot Rods versus Western, than there were at the Western Kentucky game? Because at the Western Kentucky game, there's about, 3,500?
4,000, something like
4,000?
that.
Okay.
Well, if announced attendance is 4,000, then it's probably around 3,500.
Right. So do you think that there's going to be more or less than that, both of you?
I'd say about the same. I don't know
less.
if
a little less.
Yeah, I can see that because I don't know how many people get pumped up to go see Hot Rods WKU. I think the older crowd's there, but I don't know how many of the WKU crowd is. I think a lot of the Hilltopper faithful got pumped because they wanted to beat UK.
I think a lot of UK fans came too because of it.
So, maybe maybe cognitively how fans work, if they think, oh, the last time I went to Bowling Green Ballpark, I saw the Hilltoppers win 12-3, then you might get that, but you lose UK fans. At best, it's around the same.
I think it's about less. I think it's pretty substantially less, honestly, because, not a lot of people get pumped up for Bowling Green Hot Rods baseball, to be honest. Not a lot of people go to the games, and, Western's going to bring a little bit of a crowd, but also it's, Western doesn't have the biggest crowd. They have a smaller ballpark, so, it's kind of a cool idea, and I kind of agree with you, Josh, where the competition level is, kind of unknown right now, like how they're going to play, but I'm not sure how many people are going to actually turn out.
Well, there were a few people turned out today to spring practice, open to the public and to the media, and we're going to get to that here right after breaks. Football, it continues to get closer and closer. Beautiful weather out today at the Houch. Billy and I were both there, and we're going to talk about a little bit about spring football. While we're at break, if you have any questions, if you have any comments on WKU spring football, or coming up later in the show, UK U of L basketball, tweet at us at WKU Redzone. We'd love to hear your input and see if we can get one of those questions onto the air. Right now, you are listening to the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7.
Keeping you up to date on Western Kentucky sports, you're in the Red Zone right here on Revolution 91.7.
Welcome back into the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7. Josh Holland, Billy Rutledge, Kyle Neumann, Jeff Lightsey entertaining himself with the bright lights on the boards right over to my left, and Billy's got his comb out. He warned me before the show that he had another prop this week. Last week was his sunglasses that made him look, well, we'll keep those opinions to ourselves.
Haters gonna hate, Josh.
You can't continue to do things that would prompt people to dislike you and then use the phrase haters gonna hate.
You can be yourself. You can wear sunglasses inside because your future's too bright, and you can have a comb because you got to make sure the flow's
Is
all right.
Billy Rutledge a guy that would wear sunglasses? Yes. Is Billy Rutledge a guy that cares about his hair? Yes. But is it emphasizing it purposely for you to pull out a comb during break, lean back, make eye contact with me, and start combing backwards?
Well, look at this. Look at this great conversation we're having right now. It's going to lead us right into our WKU football talk. It's just
exactly, because every time WKU football gets off the field, they go comb their hair.
Well, that's what I do. It's real windy outside this time of year. I got to have this comb out, make sure that the flow is...
That was this week's edition of Billy's forced segue into spring football. Guys, it's hopefully for good now. There's been 3 or 4 times between January and now where it's been 60s. But then it's always followed by 20s, like that weekend somehow.
Welcome to Kentucky.
I'm hoping that's, well, even more so than most years. It's been weird because there's just midweek shifts. Hopefully that's over because it's out there. It was 70 today, sunny, beautiful. Players seem to love it. And what I found was funny, Bill, I don't know if you saw this, as people are, they run sprints after every practice. They line up in a line from, goal line to goal line and run 50-yard sprints across to the opposite sideline. They line up, they look like they're about to run, and then they don't. Everyone starts laughing, they come in, and apparently Brahm had done his version of an April Fool's prank and said they were going to have to run 16. And everyone got lined up. They were not happy.
Yeah, I was talking to the defensive ends afterwards, and they were saying they were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen. They said 16, and they're like, what did we do? Really? And then Brahm actually, pulls the hat on them.
I wouldn't want to run 16 of anything. 16 one-yard sprints.
What if you had 16 home runs? You'd trot those bases.
That's fair. But I don't know if they did anything spectacularly good toward that or if that was just Jeff Brahm giving him a break. But they did look pretty sharp today, I thought, in spring practice, Billy. And Kyle, it's getting to that time of season where people are going to care a little bit more once we get closer to this spring football game about what this offense looks like, especially with how good it was last year.
Yeah, I am looking forward to the football season already. It is my favorite sport. This offense will be special again. Brandon Dowdy coming back, Leon Allen in the backfield, the receiving core. The question is, defensively, WKU was at the very bottom in FBS last year in defensive ranks. So can they come back? Can the players that they got from UAB, this team, the coaching staff, I think will have this team ready to play on defense and will be better. I don't know how much better, but I think that is what I'm most intrigued in seeing come this spring game.
It was an interesting week for WKU football, just a random week in the spring, because SB Nation, a pretty credible college football basketball site, came out and said that WKU was the leader to win the Conference USA this year. They put them above Marshall. There was a real nice preview about it. We'll actually tweet out the link on WKU Redzone so you can check that out after you get done listening to us. And then some Conference USA moved some WKU football TV times, or they moved the time differences for television. So WKU's home opener, it was moved, I believe, or was it against UAB, the first conference game?
No, it is the home opener.
Home opener, and then they had another one, the finale versus Marshall. It was such an exciting game last year that they moved it to a new time just to accommodate TV. So WKU football game getting a little bit more national recognition, and, well deserved for them.
Yeah, and the spring game won't get national recognition, but if you're watching...
Whose spring game gets national recognition?
Kentucky, Alabama. Even Kentucky's not great, but they had like 65,000 people at it last year. But Alabama's is televised.
Well, that's just because of the state of Alabama.
But,
it's like Kentucky's March Madness or Midnight Madness.
Right.
You remember Snapchat came out with this whole thing just for the UK, and Drake the rapper was there, airball to 3.
Drake the rapper.
Well, you can't just say Drake because
Drake is a well-known enough. You don't say Lil Jon the rapper or
Lil
Snoop
Jon's
Dogg the rapper.
I can list a lot of Drakes out there for you if you want. I can't list a lot of Lil Jons or Snoop Dogs.
Billy the broadcaster.
Yeah, Billy the broadcaster. But, I mean, Drake Bell's another one, just right off the bat.
Yeah, because everyone thought when you said UK basketball that Drake Bell was there just shooting half-court threes. Everyone knows who Drake is.
I don't assume, Josh. I don't assume that anybody
Everyone
knows.
assumes stuff, Billy, except for when they go, I don't assume, so they can use that age-old saying, which involves a curse word that I won't say. But the point being that the spring game won't get national recognition.
No.
But it does have some very important things that pertain to WKU over the course of the next season. And Kyle mentioned the defense needing to step up and the offense still being historic, but neither one of those happens without strides being made up front. Those were the two weakest points for both sides. The defensive line was small. The offensive line worked through some nagging injuries and lost Max Halpin and filled that in and played some different bodies, including some freshmen. And so neither one of those units gets to where they want to get without those lines stepping up.
And they're going to have some experience this year. And I did a story on the offensive line for the Herald, and really the only two positions of question on the offensive line is center and right tackle. And we talked a lot about the center. Redshirt junior Max Halpin should be the one that's in, but he's injured right now. He's kind of the lead runner. But besides that, Dennis Edwards, he's a freshman. He was redshirted. He's the one that WKU in spring right now is relying on him. And there's some difficulties. If you go out to the spring practice, it's open to the public. You know, Dowdy and the backup quarterbacks are having trouble. And that's kind of a learning curve for Edwards, but they got to hope that Halpin gets healthy so he can come back, because the offensive line, they have to be on this year, because we talked about it in some of the earlier shows. This offense probably won't reproduce that historic of a season. So it's going to be even more important for the offense to have an aggressive rushing, blocking to open up at least Dowdy for him have a chance to be able to produce the numbers that he did last year.
Right. Redshirt junior Forrest Lamp. That's who I'm interested in watching. I thought he did a pretty good job for the Hilltoppers this past year. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. But no doubt, the offensive line key in Brandon Dowdy, a guy who cannot scramble. You need a good, solid offensive line.
Forrest Lamp is a big guy.
He's big, but he's not typical offensive line big. Like, the guy looks like a tight end. I mean, he's lean. Forrest Lamp's pretty lean.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that.
He doesn't look like Darrell Williams or Brandon Ray. That's for dang sure.
He's not a guard.
But he's not like,
he's got to move. He's a tackle.
Look at Cam Clemens last year. Clemens was big.
Right.
Okay, Forrest Lamp is pretty big. Cam Clemens was big.
All right, I'll give you that. But okay. I mean, I'm just saying, like I'm 5'10", and I mean, I was afraid of the guy.
But Forrest Lamp, how many offensive linemen in college football aren't going to be bigger than 5'10"?
I don't know, but I just looked up Forrest Lamp, and a bunch of lamps just came up, just like the actual lamps. But go on.
Only you, Billy.
Look, Forrest Lamp is a classic.
6'4", 300 pounds.
Yes, that is. I'm not saying
that's lean.
Just look at.
You don't know what lean is.
Just look at him. He does that traditional or the old school half shirt. Well, you can't anymore.
Yeah,
but
he was pissed about it too.
He used to, and he was lean. There's not a lot of body fat on the guy, and that's not like me oogling over him. I'm just saying you'd notice when some guys are 6'4", 300 pounds, and a little bit doughy. Forrest Lamp's not a little bit doughy. My point there is that he looks like one of those guys that he probably is not going to make it next level as a tackle. You need to be 6'5" or above to play tackle in the NFL. Right. But he's so athletic, and he's moved inside and out. Now he's stuck at left tackle. I think he could easily play any of the three positions, and having a guy with that versatility is really, really good for this offensive line. I know he's going to stay at left tackle, but just how quick he is, how agile he is, even at 6'4", 300 pounds.
Kyle touched on it a little bit about Dowdy not having the best mobility, and the backup Fishback has plenty of mobility, but for Dowdy, it's a lot of it is kind of quick passes and draws and runs.
That helps when you don't have an offensive line that's healthy.
Exactly, and so that's going to really be an emphasis this year with kind of the undersized offensive line. Today, Josh, I wanted to talk about it a little bit and notice the crowd noise. We were sitting there in the bleachers, all of a sudden 100,000 fans just started screaming right in our ears because the speakers are right there. And players didn't know what was going on, neither did we, but it ended up being Baton Rouge, LSU's crowd noise. that was being pumped into the system at Smith Field. So getting a little preparation for when WKU goes to LSU in October this year.
Very necessary.
Yeah, not necessary for my ears though, because it was loud and it was long too. It was
Did they get any advice on pumping crowd noise from Arthur Blank?
Oh, because they lost a 5th round pick.
In case you didn't know out there, Arthur Blank,
Atlanta owner.
He apologized recently. His Falcons team over the past year and a half pumped in crowd noise during games. I guess the Georgia Dome was not filled enough.
It didn't help. They actually had a losing record.
Right. I mean, they before this whole pumping crowd noise thing, they used to be unbeatable at home. I mean, Matt Ryan in his first few years, but I did notice the crowd noise, and that's something that I don't know how much. I don't know how much this offense necessarily needs that, and I'll tell you why. Because from what I've seen and what I've talked to some of the guys that know a little about the offense, is that they generally have like 2 plays and they just go. Like that's what makes this offense so good, is they're just gonna go. So it's not a ton of switching stuff at the line, because when you switch stuff at the line, you call audibles. That takes 10 seconds. This offense isn't built on giving you any time to adjust. And I think that if you asked Jeff Brom and you said, here's your 2 options, either they know what you're doing but you do it quickly and you don't give them a ton of time to get set, or they don't know what you're doing but you give them a ton of time to get set, I think he might pick the first one out of those 2, because he's so built on getting it done quickly while someone's on their heels. Because even if I know what you're going to do as a route runner, but I'm on my heels instead of being aggressive, you still have the advantage.
Right. And I can see where you're coming from when you say that it's really hard to do that when they're actually playing or when everybody's on the offensive line of scrimmage. But a lot of it this year, I think it's going to affect Western Kentucky more, is because it's just going to be constant. Entering Death Valley at night, they're not just screaming when you get to the line of scrimmage when you're trying to call a play. They're screaming when the game's not even going on. It's going to be a huge mental thing for Western to be able to go into an SEC school or to go to Indiana or go to these bigger schools, and they're screaming the entire time. It's just going to be, it's going to be something I think that they should have more often at practice. But I think that it was a good first day for Brom.
Here's what I want to say about that Indiana game. I'm from Bloomington. That Indiana team has been bad for years. I would love to see WKU go up there and beat them. And I will say, with the offensive line, again, they don't have to be much better than they were last year, because because Dowdy gets the ball out of his hand so quickly. So really, you want to see that they don't take a step back. But with the new guys coming in, I don't see that happening. I expect WKU to have just as lethal of an offense.
Well, part of that offense is going to be that wide receiving core. It brings us to a question we have from Twitter from Derek Higdon. Derek, thanks for listening in. And the question comes, is Ace Wales and Nakarius Fant the future of the WKU offense? And, fellas, feel free to chime in. I'm not sure if I think this offense, if it continues the way it is, regardless of quarterback, it is so hard to say that any 2 players are the future, because Ace Wales could touch the ball 25 times per game, but there's still 70 other touches. Like it's not an offense that's built on Jared Dangerfield could be the guy in a lot of offenses. He still is, but it's kind of muffled a little bit.
He's just the first option, it seems like. And it's not the first option doesn't have, that much leeway than maybe the second or the third. It's just kind of Brom's offense and the way Western plays. But kind of on like the individual level, and these athletes, I mean, they're impacting not just the future, but right now. I mean, we're going to see a lot of Wales. Leon Allen. Leon Allen, he's more of a third down back, really, for Wales. Wales will be integrated into the system a lot. And Fant is, already making strides. And we already saw throughout spring practice the praise that these coaches have been giving him. Coach Shepard, the wide receiver coach for Western, said that every time the ball goes up, I think that he can make a catch. So I wouldn't even say that it's not the future, but I would say even this season.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that necessarily Wales maybe will be the future. I like his speed. I think he is a great running back. But I think that it will be a team effort going forward. I think that both will contribute. I expect the offense to just each year, I think that the offense will continue to be successful.
Yeah, I think if the question is, are they contributing now? Yes. I don't know how I could argue more for Nakarius Fant being maybe the future, because his hands, like you talked about Shepard. I mean, I saw he came across the middle today, and the pass was 5 yards overthrown by Dowdy. In between two defenders. In a live ball action, it might get picked. I don't know. But he somehow still got a hand on it, threw it back to himself. He ended up dropping it, but just the fact that he even got to that ball was impressive. They're going to make strides now. Ace Wales, I don't know if you can say he's the future because after this year, he's only got one more, right?
Right.
If you want to, I mean, DeAndre Furby, I want to see what he's got.
Marquise Trigg. He's a freshman, he's getting touches.
He's physically big. Like, he has the body as a running back. If you wanted to ask me who the future of the running back is for WKU, it's Marquise Trigg because he looks like what Antonio Andrews would have wanted to look like when he was a senior. Like, the dude's big.
And he may get some, like I was saying, he may get some touches as the third string back here at Western. So, the future is pretty bright for the offense. I know they're going to be losing Dowdy, but, there's a lot of position players that are still coming into the system.
And my other thing is, Nakari's Fant could be very good. And I don't want this to take away from him, but there are a lot of slot receivers in WKU and a lot of room for more slot receivers because especially at this level, you're going to get the guys that are 5'9" to 6 foot that didn't get looked at. You're just going to. And I mean, you're going to have your Stephon Browns, your Nicholas Norrises, Willie McNeil, who turned out to be a decent one for WKU.
Right. They all run like a 4.5, 4.6
right.
kind of
They're
area.
A little bit slower than what you would have for a small guy and not as tall. But if you look at a guy like Quinn Jernigan, who comes in as a legitimate, as freshman, 6'3", 185, get him in fresh, get him in the buffet, and tell him to eat, put him on a 7,000 calorie a day like, you get some meat on that guy and you turn him into Jared Dangerfield. That's kind of how I see is the future of the program offensively is someone who's a little bit different. Nakari's Fant has really good hands and might be for sure the best slot receiver, but that's in a pool of a lot of slot receivers.
See, I think this year it's going to be about the passing game. Now next year, when you get into these running backs contributing more, absolutely. But this year, the passing game and the receivers. I wanted to ask you guys, what is your top 3 receivers, do you think, on WKU's team coming into this year?
Easy.
Dangerfield.
Antoine Grant. Jared Dangerfield.
Are we going in?
Tyler Higbee.
You think Grant's better than Dangerfield?
Those are my top 3.
Oh, well, you weren't.
I do think Grant's better than Dangerfield, but I think he's more versatile.
Okay, well, top 3, Higbee's up there. Dangerfield, I don't know.
It's kind of Grant, Dangerfield, Higbee.
Tywan Taylor?
I like Grant's hands.
He's not better than
Taylor.
Grant, but it is top 3. I agree with you, Josh.
I mean, Grant was near the top of the team lead in touchdowns, and he missed the last 4 games. That guy's good. I mean,
it does help when Brandon Dowdy throws.
What? Oh, well, yeah, but I mean,
49 touchdowns.
But he was near the top, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
So even Brandon Dowdy throws more touchdowns, and it doesn't matter proportionally. He's still near the top.
I think Western should use Ace Wales a lot in the receiving. It's kind of like a receiver that comes out of the backfield. I think he could be a very versatile weapon, even if you put Allen on the left of Dowdy and Wales on the right. I mean, that's just another option for.
The problem is
Dowdy
you can only have 5 options on the field at one time.
Right. And if Wales can actually learn how to pass block a decent amount, I mean, we could put him out in Western could put him out on third down situations, and he could be another threat for Western.
Yeah, and so it'll be really fun, guys. It's going to be interesting here in 2 weeks when we actually get to talk. I know it's a spring game, but we get to talk about some live action, some product on the field with statistics being kept, and that's fun. Red White spring game coming up on April 18th. I think there's a live ball scrimmage next Saturday as well.
Thank you, Western, for not scheduling it on Easter again this year.
So not on Easter this weekend. You can enjoy that with your family and then come back for the red white scrimmage. So we're going to take a break.
100. That game could break 100.
One team could break 100.
Yes. So that's what I meant. One team.
Oh, okay.
One team could break 100.
You think Western's going to break 100 points in the red white scrimmage? You think one of them is going to? Write it down right now.
I'm not going there. Close. I'll say close. Mid-80s.
Wow.
What do you guys think?
No. You didn't think they're going to score 100 points? I mean, no, I think that it's a blowout. I bet you it's a blowout by one of the teams because, Dowdy's got to be on one of them.
It depends if they do what they did last year and do ones versus ones.
Right. I don't know how
last year they did first team offense and second team defense on one team versus second team offense and first team defense on the other team, so it was even.
That's a really bad defense if they're going to score 100 points.
So give me a number. Give me a number.
If they do ones versus ones, it's like 50 to 20. If they do ones versus twos, then it's like
80, 70.
Yeah.
It's not 100 though.
No. I mean, I don't know. Just time-wise?
No, it's triple digits is a lot. It takes a lot of time. That's
it would be exciting.
Did you watch the Marshall game? I mean, in the Marshall game last year,
they
the team
scored every other play.
I mean, it's legitimately, it was 3-play drives, and they still only scored 70. Like,
and overtime.
It's hard to score 100.
It is.
They're going to try,
but
though.
It would be exciting.
Watch it. What do you say, Billy? Write it down.
Write it down right now, and, you prove us wrong.
So write it down. Remember it, because after the break, we are switching gears and going to regional basketball. UK, U of L, they both played 2 games. One of them has 1 or 2 more. The other one lost 2 of their stars. We'll get to that when we come back as Jeff Lightsey, the Cards fan, shakes his head. You're listening to the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7.
Talking all things Tapper sports, you're listening to Red Zone on Revolution 91.7.
Welcome back into the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7. Billy, you made a trip down to Nashville today, and how did that I-65 drive
awful.
treat you?
It wasn't bad going there because I went around, lunchtime, maybe 1 o'clock, but coming back, it was only 3:30, 4 o'clock, and it took me a good hour and a half to get back from Nashville.
Oh, it ain't fun, brother.
It's a good, 55 minutes if it's a straight shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's less than 60 miles.
Unless you drive the speed limit like me, and then it takes exactly an hour.
Where does driving the speed limit get you, Kyle?
Not
Places
quickly.
10 minutes later?
I don't know, but I do it.
There's just too much construction. I don't know. Is it necessary for that much construction? Right around where I need to go? There's 30 construction workers. And plus, all right, I'll give you this story. I got honked at today. So I'm trying to take a left.
Did you have a sign that said honk if?
No, I'm trying to go on the interstate, but there's a break, a median between the actual turn and where we're at. There's 2 lights in a span of 200 feet. And so I didn't think that I didn't have to get into the left lane until after I passed the first light. So I had to swerve in front of this guy and speed up, and, he honked me, and it wasn't good. So it was a bad driving experience in Nashville, to say the least.
You'll get used to it, buddy, because you'll be down there a lot this summer with your internship at 104.5 The Zone. Now, Billy and Kyle, we're going to go into basketball here in a second, but as I just scrolled through the Twitter feed, and this bears mentioning. WKU softball's Miranda Kramer just got selected 6th overall in the National Pro Fast Pitch Draft.
How about that?
The first lady topper to ever be drafted. She's already won, I think, 4 Conference USA Pitcher of the Weeks. The girl's ridiculous. I mean, she's pulling 14 strikeout games. She beat number 14 Tennessee at Tennessee. The girl's ridiculous.
She's as good as what's that girl from Arizona that one year, that blonde? That's who she reminds me of.
I'm trying to think. Oh, man.
You can't just throw that out there, Kyle.
The only thing I remember about Arizona is them whooping up on Tennessee back-to-back years in the College Softball World Series.
Starts with a J, I want to say. Jenna, maybe?
Jenna Fisher? I think she's a pro pitcher. I don't think she went to Arizona.
I don't know a lot of Arizona women's pitchers, to be honest. But
I think
you're dropping the ball, Billy.
We'll have to look.
Sorry,
from now on, in the list I send you guys, I'll make sure to note if we're going to talk about Arizona pro women's pitchers.
I sit next to some softball players in my econ class, and they just say that she's amazing. Really unbelievable that what she's able to do, and for her to get drafted so high is
6th.
Is a testament to her ability.
It's pretty crazy. A lot of people that are playing this weekend in the NCAA tournament, Final Four, and the championship game will get drafted and go on to play next level basketball in the NBA, and a lot of those, probably half of those, play on one team. And that's the Kentucky Wildcats. They're going to face Wisconsin in the opening round on Saturday. A lot of people have had them picked and will have them picked to go to the national championship game, but they had a scare on Saturday, and it wasn't one of those things where a team got close and almost beat them. It was one of those things where a team had them beat for 38 minutes, and Kentucky just had a couple more shots in them.
I don't know. Aaron Harrison just continues to hit the same shot every year. It's literally he walks up with the game tied or maybe down 1 or 2, and he hits a 3-pointer that's 5 to 6 feet behind the line.
Well, I think this time would impress me more. It wasn't. Look, is it impressive to hit a shot at the buzzer? Yes, but the shots that Aaron Harrison hit last year, It wasn't as pressure-filled. They weren't down.
What?
They were not down. The worst thing that happens if he misses that shot is they go to overtime.
Yeah, but you're still in the, Final Four?
No, yes, but I understand. But the worst thing that happens if you miss that shot, there's a lot less pressure on your shoulders when you know, okay, I can make this shot. I'm going to make this shot, but if I don't, we still have more time to play.
Were they tied in both games?
They were tied against Wisconsin.
He did them in both games?
Yeah, but the difference that he did against Notre Dame that impressed me is that Jerrion Grant came down and hit a deep three for Notre Dame. And it was Aaron Harrison-esque. And then Harrison comes back and matches him, ties the game up. Kentucky goes on a mini run, wins the game. And that's that got me about Aaron Harrison is that shot, even though it wasn't at the buzzer like the Final Four last year, I think was probably a little bit more important because if he doesn't make that and Notre Dame gets another possession, it could have been over.
The Irish played their hearts out in this game. This UK team proved once again how mentally tough they are. This is the best college basketball defensive team I've ever seen in my lifetime. The guys down low for UK are huge and lengthy, and they can't be stopped. On offense, on defense, their presence is felt. This Irish team shot so well from the field, but when it mattered most at the end, the last two possessions were terrible.
Well, Notre Dame
cost them the game.
They definitely showed what teams need to do to be able to have a chance. They have to have a high shooting percentage just naturally because Kentucky's going to be able to score and you have to be able to shoot well to have any chance. And it's kind of the guard play, the dribble penetration play, and not relying too much on the inside play because if you go inside against Kentucky, you're just going to get swatted back out.
Well, I won't say that because Notre Dame went inside. I mean, their guards just made tough shots. They didn't go with back to the basket with post players, but their guards drove inside at Willie Cauley-Stein and at Dakari Johnson and just made some ridiculous shots. If you're going to have to get points in the paint because you can't score 70 from behind the line, but you're going to have to get those points, you're going to have to make off-balance shots.
The thing that's going to be difficult with teams that play Kentucky in the future in these next two games is just the guard play has to be on another level against Kentucky. It just really does. And the penetration you talked about, the shooting beyond the arc, it's just guards can carry you in this NCAA tournament. They really do. And that's why we see a lot of good guard play in the Final Four now.
Well, Augustine for Notre Dame did have his way down low, but it was on second chance opportunities. Rebounds was key for Notre Dame throughout the game, and in the end, Kentucky just held on.
It sounds really simple sometimes, but here's how you beat Kentucky.
You score more points.
Rebound, and don't turn it over.
Fundamentals, it's my favorite thing to say about basketball. Right, fundamentals.
It's so easy. Like, sometimes breaking down a matchup is there's so many different ways you could take that. Obviously, you could take it into advanced statistics. But keep Kentucky off the offensive boards. When they miss a shot, you get it. And then make sure that you shoot every possession.
It's a lot easier said than done again.
No, but what I'm saying is if you focus on those things,
you give yourself the best chance.
Make sure you shoot a shot every possession. Notre Dame had 29 minutes where they didn't turn it over. You know what? Another team that did something similar, Duke had 3 turnovers, I think, in their Elite Eight matchup. Like, if you shoot the ball every time, you got a better chance of scoring than if you give it up 12. And I think that's not so much this crazy high percentage you have to have. Just get a bunch of shots up because if Kentucky limits you to 30 shots, you ain't got a chance.
I can't argue with that, but I do want to bring up a point that I saw. I was watching SportsCenter earlier today, and Chris Webber was talking about Willie Cauley-Stein and his NBA draft ability, and he said he wouldn't start on an NBA team. Maybe not now, but not in the upcoming years either. He said Willie Cauley-Stein doesn't score enough. He's probably very in contention as one of the best NBA defensive players in college basketball right now, but Chris Webber made it very clear that he would not start. He does not score enough. I would pose that same question to you, Josh and Kyle. Do you think that he's an NBA talent starting first day one?
Yes. He reminds me of Roy Hibbert for the Pacers, my favorite team. Roy Hibbert, offensively challenged, defensively a great player. Willie Cauley-Stein reminds me of him.
Right, but Hibbert wouldn't start on every team.
Two different questions. Would he start on every team or would he start?
Would he start?
There's 32 spots open. There's not 32 7-footers.
Okay, I guess that's a very lopsided question when you got the Knicks in the league.
Exactly. But that's the thing is there's not 32 7-footers.
Right.
So yeah, he would. And that's just legitimacy of it is that if you have a 7-footer that can block shots, then, think of what DeAndre Jordan was 3 years ago. He's what Willie Cauley-Stein is now. He still has no back to the basket game. He just can grab 22 boards a game and turn that into shots. Tell me a difference except for physical girth between DeAndre Jordan and Willie Cauley-Stein.
Well, DeAndre Jordan, I feel like, is a little bit more, looking for the right word here. I don't want to say athletic, but that's what I'm going to use for maybe a lack of a better term. I think Cauley-Stein, like you said, needs to grow a little bit more girth. I think he needs to get a little bit more muscle. He's kind of thin. He's kind of like the same Ben Lawson situation, but on a much elevated scale. But I think that DeAndre Jordan's a little bit more athletic, and he can score. The thing about DeAndre Jordan, the first thing I think about is the dunks that he can do.
He scores on dunks.
Yeah, and Willie Cauley-Stein can dunk too.
Right, but he's been dunking on college basketball players. It's a different level in the NBA.
He's still 7 feet.
Yeah.
If you're 7 feet, you can dunk on 6'6". It don't matter if they're college or pro.
Yeah, but it's not like he's going to be in the paint against McNeese State or something. He's going to be up against Blake Griffin.
He's not in the paint against McNeese State this weekend either. He's against Frank Kaminsky, another 7-footer.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Last week he was playing Zach Augustine.
You asked me the difference. You asked me the difference between Cauley-Stein.
But okay. If we're projecting him to the next level, you can't say the difference is, he hasn't done it because he hasn't had a chance to do it.
All right, switching gears from Cauley-Stein, one big man from Kentucky to the other, Karl Anthony Towns. We got another Twitter question, and it says, if Karl Towns gets in foul trouble against Wisconsin, will Kentucky lose this game?
Okay, you have to preface that. What is foul trouble? Is it getting 4 fouls, or is foul trouble missing a significant time? Because Karl Anthony Towns has had 4 fouls in 3 of the first 4 games.
Think George Fan.
In 2 of those games, he had 22 points. Okay? So if he gets into foul trouble and has to sit, then they might, because Karl Anthony Towns, I think, is the single most important player on that Kentucky roster. He's the only player above 6'8" that I would trust with the back to the basket. He's the only player that I think is as good offensively as he is defensively. And if they're not hitting shots, which Kentucky has games where they don't hit shots, they have to have someone that can go in the post.
He seemed to hit every shot he took against Notre Dame.
He abused Notre Dame in the last 5 minutes.
Exactly. I'll be interested in seeing that matchup down low with Frank Kaminsky. And I will say yes, but if Wisconsin plays a great game, because Kentucky is so deep.
But Wisconsin has to say, here's the thing that we could say, you know what, yes. But if Karl Anthony Towns gets in foul trouble and Wisconsin has Frank Kaminsky get in foul trouble or Sam Decker, keep in mind Wisconsin draws commits the most personal fouls in the NCAA. Number 1. They commit the very most. And so it's very likely that Kaminsky and Karl Anthony Towns get in foul trouble. In that case, Kentucky beats them. Easy, because Kaminsky's the best player on the floor for Wisconsin by far. And so I was actually going to try to transition to Karl Anthony Towns anyways, because, like I said, he's the most important player on that team, in my opinion, because he's the most unique.
You can write it down right now. I think he's going to go number 1 in the NBA draft this upcoming draft. But I think when we talk about foul trouble, kind of think of George Fant in the first game versus Marshall, where he missed so much significant time and he was just kind of taken out of the game. And if you take Karl Anthony Towns out of this game, and Wisconsin's played great. I don't know how to pronounce that last name for Wisconsin, really. Kaminsky. Just drew a blank there. That's the typical thing on Red Zone. But if Kaminsky's there and Karl Towns isn't, I mean, that's a recipe for success for Wisconsin. So I don't think Kentucky wins without Towns having a big game.
I don't know if he has a big game. I just think he has to be there on if he gets 10 and 8, or if he gets 12 and 7.
So a typical Kentucky stat line?
No, a typical Kentucky stat line for a lot of players, but Karl Anthony Towns has had 2 25-plus point games. One of them he had 12 rebounds in the NCAA tournament. He hasn't been a typical Kentucky stat line. When they've needed someone to go to, they've gone to Towns.
And so in the situation...
They've gone to Towns.
Good one. That was a good one.
Kentucky goes to Towns. There you go, UK newspapers. There's your headline for Sunday morning if they go to Karl Anthony Towns.
It's a good thing all the UK papers are listening to us right now.
Yeah, but Kentucky has depth. They've got a lot of guards. They've got the Harrisons that can shoot, Euless can shoot, Booker can shoot. They have a lot of defenders. Dakari Johnson can play defense. Marcus Lee can block shots in the middle. Willie Cauley-Stein. But they do not have more than one player that can catch it on the right or left block and score. And that's why Karl Anthony Towns is so important, because it's not that he's that much better overall than every other player. He's really, really good, but he's the only one that can do what he does. Just like if Wisconsin loses Frank Kaminsky, he's the only one that does what he does. Sam Decker's a stretch guy. Like, he's going to shoot, he'll post up a little bit, but he doesn't do what Frank Kaminsky does. And when you have one player that's that good and does one thing, it spells danger when you lose him.
I think it's going to be a lot, this Saturday's game is going to be a lot like last year's game. I think it may be almost identical, to be honest. I think it's going to come down to one of the last shots, and maybe Aronson Harrison misses it this time. I don't know, not sure, but I think it's going to come down right to the wire once again.
My X factor will be Nigel Hayes. He's an underrated player for Wisconsin, and I think everybody will be focusing on Kaminsky. I look for Nigel Hayes down low. It'll be an interesting game. I don't think that Wisconsin wins. I said all along I had this matchup, but in the championship game, I had Duke and Kentucky. I still think that Duke is the best team that has the best chance to beat Kentucky.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there on Kyle. I think the team with the best chance to beat Kentucky is playing Michigan State on Saturday.
Right.
And Duke versus Michigan State in the other game in the Final Four. And the reason why is because we talked about that Notre Dame formula, if you will. Don't turn the ball over. Be able to shoot well. That's Duke. But they also have Jahlil Okafor. And he can eat space inside and negate Karl Anthony Towns, or maybe not be better than. Because Jahlil Okafor, when double teamed, has not always been as good as advertised.
He's a little weak.
I wouldn't say he's a little weak. I just don't think he knows how to handle it with two guys that are 6'10" on him. When you're in high school, you're playing it, and you have two 6'4" guys double teaming you. A little bit different because you just hold the ball up.
Yeah, but Duke has great guards as well. They're well coached. I think that they have the best chance. I did pick Kentucky to win it all, but again, I think these last two games, it will be like the Notre Dame game. It will be close.
Our final Twitter question from the same person is: Karl Towns better than Jahlil Okafor?
No. Jahlil Okafor is so smooth. I mean, that guy, like, Karl Anthony Towns is really good, but Okafor, I mean, just watch that guy use the bodies of defenders to move in the lane. He took a steal 60 feet the other day and took 2 steps from the free throw line, Statue of Liberty layup. Like, he ran the floor like he was 6'8". He's so smooth in the lane. Jahlil Okafor is so good.
See, the only opposition I would have that, because I do think Ofer is a better talent. I still think Karl Towns goes number 1 overall, but I think Ofer kind of fades out of games at times. I don't feel like he's the dominating presence that maybe Karl Towns brings every time that he's in the game.
I don't know if Karl Anthony Towns brings it every time he's in the game, though.
Really?
Because you talked earlier about the Kentucky stat line.
Well, that's just natural. You just said that as yourself. Karl Towns doesn't usually have the natural Kentucky
in this
stat
tournament.
Line.
In the season, he does.
Okay, well, I'm saying that Karl Towns usually gets around a double-double, and so does Jahlil Okafor, but it just seems like watching the game, the eye test. I know that's usually a bad sign of anybody trying to do anything, but I just feel like Jahlil Okafor kind of fades in and out of games, and he'll have stretches where he does do amazing things and dominate, and that's why he's maybe the number 1 player in the league. But I would say overall, Towns, is consistent, unlike Okafor.
Hey, it's worth mentioning these questions are coming from my buddy Rhett Hensley, so thank you, Rhett, for tweeting into the show. But I wanted to ask you guys, do you think that Duke gets past Michigan State, and if so, do you think that Duke will beat Kentucky?
Duke definitely gets past Michigan State. I think that Tom Izzo is incredible between the round of 32 and the Final Four. He has some knack for getting teams. I mean, I think he's 13-1 in the round of 32, and that kind of extrapolates closely to the Final Four. I've had a Tennessee team that I was really, really in love with that just got beat by 1 point by Draymond Green. It hurt. So I know how good Izzo is.
Great coach.
But he's only got 1 championship. When it gets to the Final Four, I think what happens with Tom Izzo is he never has the most talented team. No. It's not that Izzo can't coach in the Final Four. It's just that he's about to run into Quinn Cook, Jahlil Okafor, and Tyus Jones. And if he gets past that, he's either running into Nigel Hayes and Sam Decker and Frank Kaminsky, or 9 players. I won't waste your time naming them from Kentucky.
Well, and he's also going to run into Coach K, who's tied now for the most Final Four appearances of all time. And he's also, how many straight has he appeared in now?
He's appeared in 12 overall. I don't know.
Okay. Well, 12 overall. That's tied for the most with John Wooden. So
he hasn't appeared in any straight because he's gotten knocked out early in the past 2 seasons.
Okay. Well, maybe not straight, but he is Coach K is Final Four basketball, and it's just going to be a perfect storm for Michigan State, who barely beat Louisville. I mean, barely.
What a great run.
Barely.
What a great run Michigan State has had, though, and it would not surprise me if they beat Duke.
I think it's an 8 to 12 point game. Duke is so much bigger.
Write it down.
Write it down. Duke is so much bigger, and they have a guy named Justice Winslow who's, if ankle is ready, the dude can do anything on the court. He might be the most versatile player left in the tournament, because you've got a lot of really, really good athletes on Kentucky. You've got a lot of, good post players if you look at Okafor or Kaminsky. But Justice Winslow is the only guy that I trust as much shooting threes as I do on the block.
So championship predictions, guys.
It's Duke versus Kentucky, and Kentucky somehow wins by 2.
I picked Kentucky in the bracket, but I think Wisconsin gets the better of them against my better judgment. Frank the Tank just scores 37, just goes off. Wisconsin versus Duke, and then I'll just flip a coin to decide.
Frank the Tank scores 37.
Write it down.
I'll take Kentucky over Duke in a 3-point game.
Well, we'll be able to talk about that next week on the Red Zone. This week we talked a little bit of football, spring football, baseball, and then a lot of regional hoops. Once again, a shout out to Miranda Kramer. 6th overall in the National Pro Fast Pitch Softball Draft. And we're going to get out of here right now. You've been listening to the Red Zone on Revolution 91.7.